Hey, hi everyone. So we are going to talk today about the Ketchikan Victimization Survey that we conducted. First, we're going to start with some introductions. So I am Dr. Ali Ziegler. I am an associate professor at the University of Alaska Southeast and the Ketchikan campus specifically. And so I'm trained as a researcher, currently work as a professor where I do a lot of instruction as well. But my background is really heavy in this research perspective, which is relevant to what we'll be discussing today.
My name is Arika Paquette. I work for WISH. I've been with WISH since about 2015, and I am currently getting my Master's of Public Health through the online program with the University of Alaska Anchorage.
So we'll start with a little bit of background information, excuse me, about the survey that we conducted. It's community-based research. So Arika and I both are full-time Ketchikan residents. We were the primary researchers involved in this project. We conducted the research, and so we're really, community-based, which is relevant to this particular research question. This was a partnership between WISH and UAS. There was some funding for staff time, Arika's time, but really it's important to note that this was largely like unfunded research, which is just to demonstrate that you can kind of do a lot with few resources, but there are some additional limitations that might result because of that as well. There has been data collected in Ketchikan previously. So statewide data is collected every so often, every few years it's collected. So we did have some understanding of Ketchikan's specific issues related to intimate partner violence. However, the data that has been collected didn't include all of the demographic categories that we wanted to. So for example, previous studies haven't looked at men specifically. Additionally, we wanted to take a bit of a deeper dive into understanding what kinds of intimate partner violence were an issue within the community. And so we were able to ask kind of a broader range of questions related to IPV. So the research that has been done has been really great, has been really helpful in highlighting the issues that we have here in Ketchikan, but we just kind of wanted to take that a step further in some of the work that we're doing. So we collected this data primarily in 2019. It was pre-pandemic, so that's important to note just because data might look a little bit differently during a pandemic than prior to. We ended up with 200 women and 35 men. So clearly our efforts to recruit men is something that we can improve upon in the future. 35 men is, not enough to make generalizations to the broader community, but is helpful just to start to understand what issues men might be facing and how that might look similarly or different from women in our community. Participants had to be 18 and over. They needed to be full or part-time resident of Ketchikan at the time of the data collection. And kind of interestingly, so when we collected the data, we did convenience sampling. So we weren't able to get a fully random sample. That's one of the limitations of the resources that we had available to us. However, when we compare our data to previous data that has been collected, the demographics look really similarly. And so the makeup regarding like race and ethnicity, socioeconomic status, et cetera, it looks very similar to these studies that have been conducted that have used random sampling. And so that was kind of, it can't guarantee that we have a representative sample, but it does help us have more confidence in the generalizability of our sample. So just to say that it's as good as we could have expected it to be. So the data that we collected, it was a pretty lengthy survey, and there was no compensation to participants. So all participants were volunteers. We're very appreciative of anyone that was willing to take this survey because it did take some time investment. And within the survey, we asked questions related to both lifetime and past year experiences with specific kinds of violence. So have you ever in your lifetime experienced this, and have you in the last year experienced this? We broke down the types of violence experience. We got pretty specific. We had a lot of safety protocols in place just to note. So there were quick exit buttons. So if people felt unsafe taking the survey, they could exit out really quickly. We also had approval from the Institutional Review Board through the University of Alaska system. And so this was approved research to make sure that we were compliant with all ethical guidelines, so that we weren't putting anyone at undue risk of harm in any way. So we did take measures to ensure that participants were safe and protected in this. And then we were interested in understanding the types of factors that might put people at higher risk of violence, and they potentially put them at an increased risk, increased barriers to accessing the services that WISH offers and other organizations may offer in our community.
So this is one of our first things that we collected. So again, we had 200 women, and this graph looks at all women and their experiences. So the blue is lifetime and orange is within the past year. So you can see, some are fairly common, and then, more common than others. And things that we expected started to show up, and then some things we didn't expect. So next, this one looks at Alaska Native and American Indian women and their experiences. And again, kind of consistent with other research and what we know, rates tended to be higher for Alaska Native and American Indian women who participated in our survey for violence, both in the past year and over the lifetime. And then finally, this is just this for men that we looked at. And again, blue is lifetime, orange is the past year. So just to kind of explain what we were doing under each category. So you can see the categories we collected were stalking, financial abuse, reproductive coercion, sexual abuse, text or digital abuse, which also included, sexting or abuse of a sexual nature in a digital form, physical abuse or psychological abuse. For each measure or each category, we asked a number of questions about behaviors that people experience. So in this example, we look at financial abuse. And so the results kind of take them all together, but then we broke it down more specifically so we could see how we can influence our messaging, what are the actual behaviors that people are experiencing in the community. So here you can see, from a low end, 7% of people were demanded, their intimate partner demanded that they quit their job, which is a form of financial abuse, up to the highest being 33.5% of respondents said that, female respondents said that their partner had made important financial decisions that impacted them without talking to them about it first. So we were really able to dig a little deeper into the behaviors that perpetrators are using and the experiences of victims. So just getting into some of our results that we found, physical abuse, 39% of women and 20% of men reported any physical abuse in their lifetime. And in the past year, 44.5% of women and about 3% of men reported that they had been physically victimized by an intimate partner in the past year. And again, we used, this scale that asks things on, ranging from, maybe a pinch to being, physically hit or thrown out of a car or things like that. So we asked a lot of different behaviors and hoping that people would would more associate their experiences with victimization if they perhaps didn't see things like pinching or getting your hair pulled as actual physical abuse. And then again, with the Alaska Native and American Indian specific respondents, so higher 47% reported physical abuse in their lifetime, and about 10% reported victimization in the past year. And this tends to be consistent with what Wish sees in shelter often. So we definitely have an overrepresentation of Alaska Native and American Indian women who utilize our services based on, the demographic characteristics of our community. So for psychological abuse, again, this was the most common thing that people experienced. 82% of women and 60% of men reported psychological abuse over their lifetime. And that includes things like being, screamed at or sworn at, called names, blackmailed, gaslighting, those kind of tactics that again are things that, we see often and we can identify as being abusive, but among the general population, people might not necessarily identify those things as being abuse. So financial abuse was one of the first categories that we had that kind of jumped out as new information that we hadn't really looked at before. So 52% of women and 25% of men reported financial abuse over their lifetime. And so for participants within shelter or that are, really utilizing our programs, we of course offer services to get them thinking about financial abuse and how to, prevent that and keep themselves safer. But we definitely have room for improvement in our messaging to the community, to all genders about financial abuse and power sharing in relationships. So it's not been something that we've really focused on. And anecdotally, I do a lot of work in the classroom, me and my coworkers in the prevention and education department, and we've often heard teens talking about this as a tactic used in their relationships. So people saying, oh, my partner said, I have to buy them a new pair of jeans, or, behaviors like borrowing money and not paying it back and things like that. So definitely using this to look at our programming and look at our messaging and really integrate, this specific messaging into what we're doing in the community. So digital abuse, again, this was something that the ABS didn't, the Alaska Victimization Survey didn't collect any information on, but we know it's common, becoming more common, something that people are utilizing and can be getting, it's always getting more complex and kind of scarier with the way that people can keep tabs on somebody through their phone or demand access to their phone. Our phones, of course, are kind of an extension of ourselves. So when somebody's asking for constant, access to your phone or your passwords or things like that. And again, these are, messages that we are kind of talking about with teens, but, 43% of women reporting experiencing digital abuse. So room for messaging to the broader community about that. 18% of women reported receiving so many messages that they felt uncomfortable. So that somebody messaging over and over and over again. And again, this is something, teens might see, or somebody might see and say things like, oh, well, they're just, checking in on me because they love me. So really talking about that balance of power and trust, and when things are making you feel uncomfortable, then it could kind of moving into that abusive realm. And then 17% of women reported receiving unsolicited nude or pictures that were sexual in nature on their phones, or through, Instagram or Facebook Messenger or something like that. And again, digital abuse is it's a growing concern among youth and adults as abusive behaviors become normalized. So again, we've been in classrooms and talking to youth about, are they making you share passwords? And, I have a little kiddo and she's 7 and we're already trying to have those conversations. Like, the only people who need to know your passwords are mom and dad. She doesn't have anything that she has a password on right now, but, for the future. So, really how are we messaging and providing training to the community for, parents and caregivers, victims, and from a prevention standpoint too, talking with youth about how they can protect their information and when is digital abuse kind of, when is it crossing that line of being abusive or being used, to coerce people into things that they don't want to do. So we always like to mention, when somebody is messaging you 100 times about something you said no to, and then you do say yes, the law looks at that as a coerced yes, even if the pressure is not in person, the messaging over and over and over again, right, is that pressure. So how do we message to people about that yes, this is, not cool, not appropriate, but also could be, criminal. And then finally, reproductive coercion, again, not something we talk about a lot in our community messaging, but 10%, this is just one of those. So again, we asked under each question about a bunch of behaviors, and if you want any of those scales, we'll share our contact information again at the end. But this one really jumped out at us. 10% of participants report having a partner take off a condom during sex without permission. So non-consensual condom removal, it's sometimes referred to as stealthing, and it's kind of something that's recently come into behaviors that people, are noticing and talking about. And it is criminalized as rape in places like the UK, but in the United States, we don't actually have any statutes around stealthing, and, just that consent, like if you've consented to sex, then you've consented to sex with a condom. But, when somebody's removing the condom, right, the person, the victim then did not consent to that. So at WISH, we see any non-consensual activity involving, penetration or non-consensual, condom removal as rape. Really, any non-consensual sexual activity, we see that as, some form of sexual assault. So yeah, this is just something, again, that maybe we can do more on the, messaging front, but perhaps also on the advocacy side of, how do we advocate for changes in legislation, and how do we support survivors who have had this behavior happen to them. I don't know if you have any last thoughts, Allie, or anything you want to go back to.
Well, yeah, I think you did a great job summarizing some of the highlights from the data, and pointing out some of the things that maybe we weren't expecting to find. If people have more questions, we have more data. So we're happy to share any additional information, but we just kind of selected what we thought was most interesting, maybe most helpful as we move forward as an organization.
So yeah, you can email us. My email is erica.p@wisha.org, or you can call me at 228-4371. And I'm always happy to share and talk about or take suggestions, or maybe, like I said, we have these scales, so maybe you work somewhere that you want us to pull a specific scale for you, or you have questions if we have data about something. So we do a lot of community-based research, not just this project, or, you know, we're always looking to compile all of the different data resources that people might need or use in Ketchikan. So a lot of those are available too at www.revillaresilience.org. That's another project that WISH is the backbone agency on, where we're sharing out, you know, all these different data sources, not just this project. And again, to echo what Ali said in the beginning, we are super grateful to all of our volunteers who took the survey. It did take a long time, and it you know, was a lot of hard questions. It was hard writing them and then, you know, seeing these responses. So we're just grateful to everybody who is willing to share their story and help us be the most effective organization that we can be for the community.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for watching, and yeah, let us know if you have any questions.
Bye.